In this video, we will discuss patient statements and super receipts. Patient statements can be created with or without patient balances being owed. You can create patient statements under the billing area of your Katana toolbar and within the patient file directly. The patient statements can be ran as detailed, which will include insurance breakdowns, or it can be ran as a simple patient statement. You can also attach interest to any past due balances owed from a specific time frame, and patient statements will need the number 9 envelopes if you are mailing them out. To create patient statements, we will go to Billing, Patient Statement, and now we will walk through all of the different areas that you can use as filters when creating your patient statements. So the system will naturally default to all cases with a balance when creating them in your billing section. This will mean that the system will comb through all of your patient ledgers and find anybody that has a balance due and create a statement for those particular patients. You can also select only cases with a patient balance older than X amount of days. You can also select an individual patient by selecting this option, select the select button, and then select the patient that you would like to generate a statement for. When choosing an individual patient, you can create a statement, and if the patient doesn't owe anything, then it will still generate the statement, but it'll show the patient balance due is 0. You can generate statements for specific providers if you are using the assigned provider area of your patient files to generate for that specific provider. You can do the standard, which is just patient responsibility and what they owe, or detailed, providing a detailed breakdown of what is owed, and it will include insurance information as well. In this video, we will run for both, but first we'll do the standard. You can do payment due blank days after statement date, or indicating on the statement that a payment is due now. You can select this box to apply interest, and it states interest payment for charges older than 30 days, interest percentage, you add in the percentage, and the system will know to attach that amount of interest to the statement and to the patient's ledger to pay. You have the ability to create a default statement message. So in this example, we have welcome to your best health ever in Katana Chiropractic, but you can select or enter anything in that box and it will generate on each individual patient statement. So if you want to notify them of any clinic changes, you can put a statement if you're billing insurance that states something to the effect of this statement is true and correct, unless an insurance EOB comes in and states otherwise. So that way it can prevent patients from coming up to the front desk disputing what they're being presented because maybe their dates of service were provided on a patient statement before and it stated something different as what they owed. Your database will come with this pre-populated test information. So you'll want to make sure that you go through this area and enter in your clinic information, address, phone number, and once you enter it in the first time, it will hold, so you do not have to do this every single time. We just have this information filled in so that way you can see what should be printed. You can do a specific date range for your patient statement. So if you are doing it for, say, the month prior, so everything that took place in, say, June, just keep in mind that it will reflect balances owed in June as far as that date range that you provided. So if you're not running it up to a current date, then it may not be the same as what's reflecting in their actual patient file. You can select this box that says only display patient information, and what this will do is it will exclude anything related to insurance. So even if you're running a detailed patient statement, you could exclude anything that has verbiage or information tied to their insurance policy. You can select specific case data, so only create for cases with patient balances greater than X amount of dollars. So if you don't want to generate statements for people that owe you, say, less than $10, you can separate those out so that way they are excluded. And then it will naturally default to all case types and all case statuses. But again, you can uncheck and select the specific cases that you would like to generate your statements for. And once you have made all of your filter changes, you will go ahead and select the next button. And it's yelling at me due to what I selected and not selecting an individual patient. So I'm going to take all this back to default and hit next. Once you generate your statements, they will show in a line, just as it does when you are creating HCFAs. To view your patient statements, you can select the view boxes and select view statements at the bottom right corner. It will display the first one you checked, and you will have the ability to go through each individual statement that you had highlighted to view, and it will show you the breakdown of the date, what took place with the patient. So if they had a balance forward entered, an interest charge, it'll show any write-offs, the payments made during that date range, and things like that. So it will break down everything. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and print these, I would leave the print box selected and hit next, which will bring up my printer box and allow me to generate those statements and get those mailed out. If you would like to export your patient statements so that way you can email them, you will have to hit the next button. Go ahead and select cancel because you actually don't want to print those, and hit finished. And what that does is it locks it into the patient file. So now you have the ability to go to patients, select the specific patient you would like to email that statement for, go to the billing tab of the patient's file, go to patient statement, and depending on how you generated those, it would be housed under standard or detailed. Once you find the specific statement that you generated, you would hit view at the bottom right. And then you can use the export options via Excel spreadsheet, Adobe, or Word, and then get those saved to your computer and send those out. Now, to run a detailed patient statement, it works the same way. And we'll go, I'm actually going to do it here in the patient's file, just so that way you can see the different way to generate a statement. So I'm going to change it to detailed, hit create at the bottom right. It's naturally going to generate for just this patient just because I'm doing it in the patient's file. But if you were doing it under billing, you would have the ability to do detailed for all cases with a balance, and then it would naturally, or you would select detailed right here instead of standard. Once you've made your selections, go ahead and hit next, and we'll just hit view and view statement. So that way you can see how different this statement is based on now it's going to generate that insurance responsibility, how much they owe you, how many insurance write-offs were applied to those charges in that date range, how much was paid, and the balance still owed. And it will do the same thing with patient responsibility. And it will also give you a breakdown if this patient has numerous cases within the clinic, then it will show you any past any other outstanding balances owed in those cases, even though it will only show what's owed for the case you're actually generating it for. It will still indicate to the patient that they owe you an additional amount for a prior case, and then you can go ahead and create individual statements under those cases as well. If I was to X out of here and go back and put this only display patient information and hit next, you can see that all of the insurance information is gone, but the patient responsibility is still there, and you still get a breakdown of patient balances and if there was any other outstanding case balances and things like that for other cases. Once you have all your selections and your statement looks correct, just hit next, print them out if you would like, hit cancel if you don't, and hit finished, and it will log again in the patient's file. So now moving on to super receipts. Super receipts can only be generated within the patient's file. You will do it very similar to creating a patient statement, except for you will go to the billing tab and hit the super receipt sub tab. When you are wanting to generate that super receipt, you will hit create at the bottom right. You will select your specific range of days. Now keep in mind, if a date of service is outside of the date range you selected, it will not bring it forward onto the patient statement. So if you're having to do a super receipt for all of the patient's charges, you can go ahead and select everything before today, and it will pick up everything in their case. Or you can do a specific range of days, a specific day, week, month, quarter, year, and everything after a specific date, maybe if insurance took over or something like that. You can indicate to only include charges that would print on a 1500 claim form, and that is coming from your price list. So anything you told the system that a CPT code cannot be printed on a 1500 form, it would exclude those. So things like supplements, pillows, it would make sure to keep those off of your super receipt if you would like when that box is checked. If you want to generate everything in the patient's file, including possible supplements and things, you can go ahead and uncheck the box, and it will bring forth all charges. You can include the provider's MPI number, the provider's tax ID number, and include a full description for ICD codes. It will naturally print the ICD-10 codes that are applied to the patient's appointment and charges, but if you want a description of what those ICD codes mean, then that's what this is for. The from address, you can have it as insured's name and address or patient's name and address. The to address is naturally going to default as primary payer, but you have the ability for it to generate to an attorney. If the attorney is added, you can have a free text box if you want to enter in the information in here, or you can have it leave blank. Once you've made your selections, hit the next button, and you will see a breakdown of how the super receipt will look. So it will give the patient's information, their insurance ID if that was entered, all those things that they may need for reference. And then at the bottom, you'll see the date of service. You'll see the user. This is saying Katana user, but that would actually be the provider's name. The NPI number, the tax ID number. Here's the full description for those ICD-10 codes and a full list of the CPT codes applied for that date of service. And then it's also going to give you a breakdown of the charges. So the full charge amount, how much were any write-offs that were applied to those dates of service and those charges, and then any patient payments that were applied towards those charges. So this super receipt will not show you a full value of a patient payment. So if a patient payment came in for $100, it's not going to show you a $100 patient payment, but it will break down that $100 payment amongst the charges that it needs to go to, and then show you that amount in the pink area, so that way insurance knows how much to reimburse the patient. Now, keep in mind that the super receipt may not look correct all the time. If the patient has a running balance and they're not current, then patient payments are always applied to the oldest outstanding balance first. So, like I said, if they're not current, then the super receipt won't be current either. Another reason that why the super receipt might not look right is because of responsibility to the charges. Maybe they're not calculated correctly as far as what patient owes versus what insurance owes, or a write-off may have needed to go into a specific charge and it was forgotten. So the system didn't know that it should exclude that amount from the patient to pay. So it's trying to resolve 100% of that charge. So if your super receipt doesn't look correct, you'll always want to go back into the patient's file, look at their ledger, look at their charges. You'll see the breakdown of patient owes and patient paid, and the patient paid column should match what's in the super receipt. So if the patient paid column isn't correct, you can always double click the charge, take a look at what's going on with that specific charge, and make your changes that are needed, or look at the patient's case balance and see that, like, my patient owes $34.99 still, so that's why there's $34.99 owed on this remaining charge. Once that payment comes in, the charge will be taken care of in full, and then the super receipt will reflect that. Another thing to watch out for when it comes to super receipts is your ICD codes not presenting on the super receipt. So if that happens, you'll come over to the patient's appointment tab. You'll select the specific appointment you're generating your super receipt for, hit review. Once that patient appointment comes up, we can go to edit charges because we can see that the ICD codes are entered. Right here under this ICD code column to the right of the specific CPT code, once you select it, these boxes should be checked. If they're unchecked, that means that the ICD codes were entered in after the CPT code was saved and the appointment was checked out. So you will need to come in here, check these boxes to map the specific ICD-10 code to that specific charge, and then it will present itself on the super receipt. This concludes our video on the patient statements and super receipts. We hope you enjoyed it.